Danielle, imagine walking into a listing presentation and already earning the seller's trust right out the gate. What kind of value did you have to bring for that appointment to earn that credibility right away? A powerful listing presentation could be the difference between you walking away with the listing and walking away without it. In this week's episode, we're going to break down why a strong listing presentation is crucial for showcasing an agent's talent, building rapport with the sellers, and ultimately walking away with the deal. So a great listing presentation is going to be critical for you as a listing agent, especially when you're trying to earn a seller's business. Do keep in mind a lot of times sellers are going to be interviewing multiple agents, sometimes as high as 5. Typically, we normally see 2 to 3 other agents are going to be competing to win that seller's business. What separates you from that competition? What degree of separation are you bringing to that appointment to show why you're more skilled and valuable and the seller should work with you over any of the other agents that you're competing with? One main mistake to avoid on a listing presentation is that lowest cost isn't also necessarily who's going to win the deal. It's which agent is bringing the most value to the table that's going to earn the seller's trust, where they're ultimately going to decide on who they want to work with. It doesn't necessarily mean who's going to be priced less. A lot of time that's a misconception with most agents, where you feel that lowest price is going to win the deal, and obviously that's not always the case. Another misconception on winning the listing presentation is you always don't have to agree with their price. Sometimes you're going to build credibility as an agent by giving them your perspective, going over the data, what's going on in the marketplace, and sharing with them this news, and ultimately enlightening them to determine what price they should ultimately list for. I'm now going to give you 5 tactics to winning a listing presentation. The first is knowing the seller's pain points. What's their motivation for listing? Keep in mind, we all have one mouth and 2 ears for a reason. This is best to ask as many questions as you can to find out their motivation in selling, and make sure that you listen and definitely take notes. The second is to showcase your proven marketing plan. What will you be doing to bring the property to market and showcase this property for your seller? They're going to want to see all the websites that the property's listed. What are you doing to boost it? How are you attracting buyers? And everything that goes into marketing a home. At the end of the day, the seller is going to list with the agent who they feel is going to be able to command the highest price, but also showcase it to the most amount of buyers. So it's very important for you to be detailed when going over your marketing plan and go over everything that you're going to do to showcase their property. Third is mastering the art of pricing strategy. A lot of times we like to go on what we call comparable homes. I've changed my terminology to use relevant properties. A lot of times when you're going over and giving your comps, as we call them in the real estate industry, of those comparable homes, that a seller is going to put a strong emphasis on that property that you're comparing it to. The next component is mastering the art of your pricing strategy. How are you pulling the properties that you can compare to your seller's home? The next tactic is mastering the art of pricing a home. It's very important that you pull accurate data. Typically, when you're looking for comparable properties to compare to your subject, typically when you find comparable properties that you're comparing to your subject, you want to typically stay around the same year built as the subject property, in addition to go about 10% variance for your square footage. So if your subject property is 2,000 square feet per se, built in 2016, you probably want to find homes in 2014 to 2018 range that are anywhere from 1,800 to 22 square feet. Sometimes we find that people are bringing data to compare a subject property to that is irrelevant and won't actually be a direct comp. An example of this is if your seller brings to you a house that's 4,000 square feet to their home that's 2,000, commanding the same price. What we found is that with the value of land, when you incorporate it into pricing a home, the typical cost to build the home diminishes. So what I mean by that, and what you'll notice is that larger homes are going to sell for a smaller price per square than smaller homes because we have to take the land into account. It's also more expensive to build out than up. So you'll typically see that it's also more expensive to build out than up. So we also see a lot of times that 2-story homes are selling for a smaller price per square than you will on a 1-story build. The next, highlight your unique value proposition. What makes you different than all the other agents? What separates you from the competition? What are you willing to do to go above and beyond to win your client's business that the other agents aren't willing to do? A lot of times that most agents, especially newer ones to the industry without a proven track record, will think they can't compete with experienced agents. And that's not the case. When I was starting off in real estate, one of the things that I'd focus on as my value prop is I had way more time to dedicate to listing and marketing their home and focus more on that property because I had such a limited clientele. You got to figure if you're a busy agent with multiple listings, you're not going to be able to dedicate that much time to your clientele, as if you're a new agent, only focus on 1 or 2 listings. You're going to be able to dedicate a lot more time to marketing that property and doing things to showcase it because you have such a limited portfolio. And lastly, close with confidence. The sellers are going to make sure that they trust and believe that the agent they select is best equipped to market and sell their home. If you're showing any signs of weakness during this process, they're going to pick up on that quick. Just be confident in what you're saying. And a lot of times, sellers are going to be able to sniff out if you're BSing them, and you always want to tell the truth. If I ever lost out on a listing due to competition, I was just vulnerable enough to ask the seller what is that made them pick the other agent over me. And then I made darn sure to incorporate that into my listing presentation next time around, so I didn't lose out on the listing. Always keep in mind, if you take an L, but you take a lesson with it, you're going to end up with a W. But if you don't learn from it, you're keeping the L. So now I'm going to go over some pitfalls to avoid with your listing presentation. 1, overloading the sellers with data. Some agents will bring a ton of comparable properties to go over with the seller at the time of the presentation. I try to limit it to 3, just as an appraiser would. The appraiser is going to have typically more properties in their appraisal, but really focus on 3 comparable properties that they're giving most weight to the subject property. I tend to do the same with the listing presentation. If you start to bring 5, 6, 7, 8, up to 10 comparable properties to review with the seller, a lot of times that's going to overwhelm them, and it's going to be tougher for them to kind of land on a price that makes sense for the market. If you can really hone in and find 2 or 3 properties that are most similar to the subject property that you'll be listing, it's going to be way easier for you to not only dial in price for yourself when you're presenting it to the seller, but also getting them to agree. The next is that you didn't address the seller's concerns or what they're worried about. We talked previously in the secrets that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, and a lot of times you need to make sure that you're listening to what the sellers say. If you're not reiterating that throughout the listing presentation to build that confidence in your seller as well as trust and the reliability that they know that you're listening to them, it's really going to hurt you later on throughout this process. So make sure that you're picking up on that, listen to your seller, and don't disregard what they're saying, because you're going to need that information later on. And the final one is that you failed to differentiate yourself. You were just another face in the crowd. You didn't stand out. You ultimately probably didn't win the listing presentation because you didn't go above and beyond like another agent did. Sometimes you got to let your guard down, get a little uncomfortable, and really showcase who you are as a person and win that business. Go over in great detail and showcase how hard you're going to work and what you're willing to do to earn their business. Keep in mind, you want to stand out. You want to be the one they go with. Otherwise, you're just going to be one of the other agents who's walking out of their house without a signed listing agreement. I want to challenge all of you to something today. I want you to be a little vulnerable and also be a little self-aware. The last listing appointment you went on, why didn't you win it? Do you know? Were you vulnerable enough to ask your sellers why they chose to go with another agent? I want you to really try to figure out why it is that you feel they chose to go with another agent. I want you then to incorporate that into your listing presentation. It's best that we handle all objections. It's super important to handle all objections up front, so that way we're not having to answer questions about it later on throughout the process. So make sure to incorporate that in your listing presentation. If you haven't gone on a listing appointment yet, and this might be your first one coming up, then I challenge you to do something that you might incorporate to the listing presentation that you weren't thinking about before, but maybe think of why you might lose a listing appointment for any reason, and make sure to incorporate that on your listing presentation. I also want to share something that I think is going to help you win more listings. 1, if for any reason you're in a disagreement with the seller about price, and your seller wants to start at a higher price, and you're not confident that they're going to be able to achieve that desired price with current market conditions, no problem. Just ask them if they're willing to eventually come down to the price it is that you're recommending. What you can simply do is have a price adjustment addendum already in that listing packet that they sign initially when they go with listing with you. After 30 days, if you're not having market activity at listing at the higher price that they wanted the market at, it's going to automatically revert to the price you recommended. And this way you're getting buy-in from them out the gate. Then you don't have to worry about going for a price reduction if they told you they would later on. Then maybe get a change of heart or change of mind throughout the process. This is going to be a great tactic for you to know, hey, do I have a realistic listing that I can eventually sell? Or is this just going to be something that sits on the price? Or is this just going to be something that sits on the market overpriced? I'm hoping everyone here was able to learn a thing or two that's going to help them win more listings here in the future. I shared those key tactics that are going to help you win more business when competing against other agents, as well as some pitfalls to avoid to ensure that you don't lose a listing. Make sure to tune in for our next episode, where we're going to talk about why community events matter when it comes to lead gen and branding you as an agent. Take care.